Okay, so this is my brand here. We are French Grey Tails. French Grey Tails was started in 2012, but before it was started, I have to kind of give you a description of what happened and how it kind of came to be. My background, I worked for Whitbread for a lot of years, so I was very branded in customer service. So I worked for Travelling and Bruce Fair, and then I opened Costa Coffee on Mopeth High Street. And I remained there until after I was married. I was married and we tried for babies straight away, as you do. We had 2 miscarriages, and then I got pregnant again. And the 3rd pregnancy, I was really poorly from about 13 weeks onwards. And I went on the sick at work and sat in the settee and cooked my baby as long as I possibly could. My waters went at 23 weeks, and my little baby girl Daisy was born at 24 weeks. And this is my little girl, and she was £1.7, and it was really terrifying. Probably the hardest thing you'll ever go through. She was in hospital for 4 months. We came home, she was born on the 15th of August, and we came home on the 4th of December. And she came home on oxygen and tube feeding. I had hospital appointments and nurses and physios and everything else that comes with a premature baby. It was really terrifying. In March, I was planning her christening, and I got pregnant with a little boy called George. And this is George. George was born 11 months later. So I had 2 babies, one with like medical needs, and a little baby George who was born at 31 weeks. Not scary compared to Daisy, but still early. So I had 2 early babies. Gareth was a policeman, Mr. FGT is sitting there. So he used to go to work. I had to quit my work altogether and became a full-time mum, juggling babies and hospital and everything else. And it wasn't until things started to calm down with Daisy and she started to get a bit better and everything started to settle down. I got post-traumatic stress, and I was terrified of taking antidepressants. The doctor was like, you need to take tablets, and I was terrified of taking them, and it didn't feel right. And my house was in a bit of a disrepair because I'd had no money and we had only had 1 wage to pay all the bills. And I started painting in the garage to make the house pretty on a really low budget. And I found something called chalk paint, and chalk paint took all of the stress of painting out of it because you don't have to do the prep work and you can bash on and paint without doing all the kind of sanding and the prepping and the priming. And I started painting, and the painting got a bit out of control. And I used to like disappear into the garage with an audiobook and a tin of paint, and I used to hand the babies over to Gareth, and I loved it. And the garage was filthy and full of spiders, but it was my little haven that I could get away from, be really creative. And the creativity kind of started to fix everything, and I was getting quite good at it. And I went to bed one night and I said, Gareth, I think I'm doing all right here. And there wasn't really anyone else doing it at the time. There was me, there was a lady up in Newcastle, and that was pretty much it. I'd kind of done my research and there was nothing really happening. And I says, give us £100 and we'll spend 50 on furniture and 50 on paint. By the reason he's lying trying to go to sleep. And he went, right, Layla. And I was like, give us £100 and I'll spend 50 on furniture and 50 on paint. And the next day I did, and French Grey Tails was born. So this was my first table that I painted and sold. And I was terrified that when it went, and I had to follow the lady home and make sure it was at home and it was polished and everything was fine. And I rang her up a week later to make sure she was happy with it. And as you do when you make things by hand. And so that's pretty much where it started. And this is where I used to work. This is my garage. And the winter was horrendous. I never worked in the house, I only ever worked in the garage, so that it was a separate thing from family and work, and it was all kind of kept separate. But it was freezing and it was filthy, and I had no heating, so I used to have 4 layers of clothes on in the winter, and it was hard physical work, but it was very therapeutic because I was making things lovely. And it was probably about this point where I started the Facebook page, and I used to rant daily about the kids, and I was very honest about the family and what I'd done that day, and about whether the kids had had a good day or a bad day, if I'd had no sleep, and here's a chest of drawers that I've painted, and it was very kind of honest. And I always signed off as a Layla so that people kind of knew about us and who I was, and it kind of started to mushroom from there. And pretty soon I kind of started doing Tynemouth Market, which is terrifying, standing there with your wares, showing people your wares. It's like that you've done yourself. It's a proper scary thing. But this is when people started to come to see us, to kind of put a name to kind of the Facebook page. And I used to take nothing home at the end of the market. And it got to the point where I was doing the market and keeping the Facebook page going and doing other people's work, and it was all getting a bit too much. So this is what the garage looked like just before I took the premises on, and it was like a packing can. I used to squeeze in the rain and paint in the corner and then squeeze back out again. And we went to Cornwall one summer, and I had £500 in the bank when we came home, and I'd found a shop, and I'd said, we're going to open a shop. And Gareth's going, how the hell are we going to open a shop, Layla? And I was like, it'll be fine, it'll be fine. I found the right shop. There was no footfall, none whatsoever, but the shop felt right. It was an absolute hovel because it was all we could afford. The rent was really low, and I thought, well, if people are coming to my garage in the back of Bedlington, they'll come to a pretty shop in Bedlington with no footfall. And that's kind of how it worked. Parts of the family thought I was crazy, that I was taking this shop on, and what would happen if it didn't work, and et cetera, and how are you going to pay for it when you've got no money in the bank? But I paid for it by working, so I would do a commission, put the money back in, do a commission, put the money back in, do a commission, put the money back in, and eventually I had a shop to open. 3 weeks later, we opened Bedlington, and we took on Authentico chalk paint. And from there, things started to kind of move quite quickly, because we'd built up quite a reputation before we'd opened the shop. There was a level of engagement, so people kind of knew about Wert, and they were coming in to meet Wert and buy the paint from us because they knew who we were. And I was always really open with kind of helping people to paint themselves, and it all kind of fell into place. I was very busy, and I was on my own, and this is when we took the first team member on. Jane had taught Jane how to paint when I was in the garage, and Jane came in one day, and she's a teacher, and she was in tears, saying she didn't want to go the next day, and I was desperate to take someone on, but petrified at the same time, because it's one thing not paying yourself at the end of the week, but you have to pay your team member, and it was terrifying. So I give her a job for 2 days a week, and then I threw up in a bucket and went with it. And Jane was our first team member, and then came Victoria, our apprentice. And apprentices are fab, of amazing things if you can find the right one. The wages are very low, but with that comes a lot of investment of you, so you have to give your whole self to them, so that you can't afford to pay them financially, but if you give yourself, then they learn in more skills, than they're getting their skill set rather than like a financial gain at the end of it. Victoria was amazing, and she started with us in full time. And then things started to kind of really start to build momentum. We became the biggest chalk paint supplier for Authentico in the UK from a Bedlington shop with no footfall. There was no one, but everyone was coming because of our online activity. So kind of people knew about us through Facebook and Instagram and all the rest of the social media, and that was kind of how we were doing it. But I felt like Facebook had worked by the knackers, really. And if Facebook changed the way that they viewed our page, if Facebook changed the way that people saw us, that would have a direct impact on our business. So I couldn't see Bedlington surviving past the 5-year point. So we moved over to Morpeth, and I found a perfect little shop next to the bridge. It was beautiful and had a high street setting, and that's our Morpeth shop. And it was it was the right shop. It was the scariest thing ever, going to Morpeth rent and Morpeth rates and all of the other things that come with it. It was petrifying. But I knew that I had to keep the girls' jobs safe, and that felt like the only way to do it. So we moved in August last year, and since then it's gone a bit bananas, really. We're really, really busy. We're just about to franchise, so that's all exciting. And we're kind of national footing starting to start to build, so we post paint out daily all over the country. And we became Liberty of London stockists, which is rather marvellous. We're the only North East stockist for Liberty in the UK. And we stalked them for about 6 months before they answered the phone to us. And by that point, they kind of knew all about when the decision had been made. But yeah, Liberty is quite amazing. What I wanted to talk about, though, was the kind of juggle that you have to do as a woman. And I have 2 children who are now 6 and 5. And I work pretty much an 80-hour week, I would say. I do most school runs. My husband's a policeman still, so he does shifts. But I do kind of morning drop-offs, and when he's on late shift, I do the afternoon pickups. The children are kind of unaware, really, of how hard I work, because I do most of my work in the evening, and that's kind of all the social media side. And it's very easy to kind of put Coronation Street on and sit and do your toenails and kind of do all the things that you need to do on a night time. But if I didn't do that side of it, the business wouldn't grow, and you would kind of stagnate quite quickly. So the children aren't really impacted on the level of kind of hours that I do. They don't really see it, because most of it happens when they're asleep. And that's the kind of the unattractive side of running your business, because it is a lot of work on a night time. It's hard work, and it is kind of monotonous at times, but it's so important to kind of be on there every night and kind of pushing your Facebook and engaging people and getting them involved in your business and feeling like they're a part of it. And the other thing is kind of, it's really difficult when you have a business and you haven't got a boss. So you think, well, you can do anything you like, really, and you can say whatever you like because you haven't got a boss. But the kind of way that I approach it is, if I would have gotten wrong for something in Costa, well, then I don't do it. So if I think something, and we see people copying and kind of doing different versions of what you do and things all the time, and it happens, and don't waste too much energy on that kind of thing, because when they're kind of looking at what you did yesterday, you're working on something for next year. So don't kind of waste too much time and energy on that side of it. But be really professional in your postings, and if you feel like if you were in a corporate environment and you wouldn't be allowed to say it, don't say it, because it looks really unprofessional, and kind of keep yourself always kind of like really professional and sensible in your postings, and open with your knowledge, be open with people and share. So we kind of help about 1 woman a week, I would say, with their businesses, and I'm always saying, people come in and I'll have a chat with you about your social media, and there's probably a few people in here that have been bashing about social media and hashtags, and it's so important. But yeah, it's a hard job. It's amazing, and it's probably the hardest thing, but the most rewarding thing when you look at what you've done and the people that you have in your business, and how far it can go. Yeah, it's a clever thing, and this is kind of our motto. They should believe she could, so she did. Whenever you come into our shop, the whole point of the shop is that you can come in and you don't want to paint, you don't want to get your hands dirty. Well, we can do that for you, and we can paint your furniture, or we can make you a lampshade, or you can get one that's already done and finished, or you can come in and we'll help you to do it you can just get all the bits and pieces, so you can do it yourself at home, but we'll help you with that verbally, so we'll kind of give you the advice, and you can ring it up, and we'll help you on the phone or on an email or whatever. Or you can do a workshop to do it. but we're knowledge and we're skills. There's 9 of us now, and each of us has a different skill set. And our knowledge and skills aren't something that's kept in a big glass box because we're really clever and we don't want to share it. It's all open, and we're really kind of, that's one of the rules about Friendship Tales, is that you have to be open with your knowledge and your skills. And it's really important. And that's it really. Yeah. No idea what I